Okay. Well, good afternoon, and I hope you enjoyed lunch. And just to start after lunch, I'll just ask a few questions, and you can raise your hand, so just exercise a bit. So how many of you have heard the word machine learning? Great. How many of you have heard the word LLMs? Okay. How many of you have heard the word ChatGPT? How many of you have heard about, let's see, which one am I missing? Try llama. Okay. And algorithms? Good. So we have an audience who have heard a lot about many things. And AI, of course, it's the buzzword these days. Great. So we have an audience who have heard, like every day now, everyone is using the words machine learning, AI, LLMs, ChatGPT. And actually, when we're talking about all these things, AI is many, many things. So it's a big umbrella for many, many things. And we're going to talk today and with an amazing panel. I'm privileged and honored to be here with colleagues I've had the honor to work with for many years. But we're not only going to talk about theory and what machine learning is, or what AI is, or what an LLM is. We're covering some of that, but we're actually going to talk about some very concrete examples on how it has been used by investigative journalists, either for advancing investigations, either to find leads for stories or do a full analysis, but also developing tools. So we have here organizations who have developed open source tools, so you can access to them for free, that actually have the power of AI behind those tools. And we are also going to briefly talk about something where you have another panel more in depth and that will cover that part, which is how to investigate AI. So one thing is holding AI accountable. The other part is using it to power up our investigations. Of course, that comes with challenges, opportunities, and then we are like, well, how does it work? How long does it take? And spoiler alert, machine learning and AI is not the answer for everything. So that we need to keep in mind. It's not a magic formula, and we need to be very mindful. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes people. So when we're talking about AI and machine learning, we're talking about different things in one place. So you could use it, sometimes you could develop your own model and you could predict. Sometimes you could classify information. And then basically you are teaching the computer human behaviors or human knowledge. You're sharing it with the computer. You're training it to learn what you know. And instead of let's say we're going to distribute some documents between the four of us, and we're going to say, is this document a financial statement, is it a loan agreement, or is it an invoice? And then instead of all of us going through those, let's say, 800,000 documents, and each one of us will go and do 200,000, we will teach the computer how we think and how we understand those documents, so the computer, for example, could classify those for us. And then we can see if it gets it right or wrong. But that's a simplified example, and I will let Jelena and Paul and Marina navigate more in depth into the waters of how we have been using it, and cover also other aspects like LLMs. In investigative journalism, like the ChatGPT LLM has been less frequently used. What we have used mostly is what is called machine learning. So that has been the heaviest part of the work that as investigative journalists we have used it for investigations and to help advance the work of investigative journalism. But we know there's some experiments with LLMs, and we will briefly mention something about that too. So I'm not going to talk more, because we have so many great things to share. So first we'll start with Jelena, who is a training manager and Eastern European Partnership Coordinator at the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And she's also a data reporter. She's part of the data and research team there, and I have had the privilege to work with her for many years. So I will let her talk all about what ICIJ has been doing over the years using AI.
Hi, thank you, Amy, very much. Hi, I'm Jelena. Nice to see you again after 2 years. And talking about AI and ICIJ, I just want to mention, maybe for some of you who don't know, International Consortium of Investigative Journalists are a team of journalists that actually all 4 of us here worked on the projects that you can see on the screen behind us. And on most of them, we actually did use a lot of I would say first tools, but also machine learning options that helped us improve our work, produce these investigations that are world known. These are only some, but basically since Paradise Papers, ICIJ has been using machine learning in different projects in order to do certain things. And by saying that, I mean that AI is really useful and it needs to be there, but there needs to be a reason why you do it. Luanda Leaks is a project about Angola and how wealth from Angolan state has been disappeared by previous president's family. And most of the documents that came from that leak were in Portuguese. So the first AI question we had there is how to translate documents that are in different language, but to keep everybody safe. And the reason for that is that I guess most of you do know that Google translations are not that safe. So we wanted to make sure that everybody inside of the project can translate these documents, understand them, but not leak them outside and not to use the tools that would leak them outside. And AI, actually, machine learning and an offline translation tool, Apertium, helped us a lot for that. It's, of course, not the perfect solution, but it's good enough for us to understand the documents. Later onwards, we kind of changed the translation tool, but we still use it a lot because most of our projects do have a lot of documents that are from different languages. So it's essentially important for us to still be safe. So one of the main reasons why we started using it at that stage was to keep everybody safe when they are when they translate documents. You may remember another project that ICIJ had done. Pandora Papers today is the biggest collaboration in journalism history. We had over 600 journalists from all over the world working on the documents, and the leak had almost 12 million files, records of different kinds. And the variety of these records were immense. Even though we had 600 journalists working on it, to check most of these documents, we could easily agree it's a little bit crazy, right? You cannot just do that by hand. It would take you years of investigations and research just to understand the files, just to understand the records. And one of the second major thing next to being safe was how to speed up the investigations, how to make sure that we have leads for journalists that are joining our projects. What we do is that we create something that is called country lists, where we have potential leads for media organization and journalists from all over the world. The question here was how to come up quickly with story leads. Among all of these documents, we had a lot of documents that different providers, banks, and other people used in order to classify them, that they were doing like the research on their clients, world check documents, Google researches, newspaper articles, and so on and so. So what we have used here is to clustering. We started using machine learning for clustering the documents to have unified tags that everybody would be able to see and exclude them from their search. We would immediately remove by millions of useless documents for journalists by using this clustering the documents that came from machine learning. So this is another tool, and it helped our journalists that were implemented in an additional tool that is based on a lot on machine learning, and that's ICIJ's data share. And data share is a program like search engine that helps us use it as a database. And then by simply tagging certain tags, through clustering these documents, we were able to exclude these millions of useless documents. It speed up the process immensely and helped reporters to explore their researchers much quicker. This is how data share looks like when it's open. Data share is open tool. You can download it for your computer. You can use it yourself, and you would have a similar tool for yourself as well. Different type of search engines probably use something similar, but for us, the text extraction through computer vision by using OCR is immensely important. As you can guess, many of these leaked documents, they are coming as PDFs, as images.
1 second. Raise your hand. Do you know what OCR is? Can you tell them briefly what OCR is?
Is finding certain term on image or JPEG or any kind of image picture in order to be searchable. So the idea behind it is that you can make an image searchable, automatically, of course. It doesn't work all of the time, otherwise it would be perfect. But in most of the cases where the images are clear enough, we are using that as an option in order to make it easier for everyone. So the one, again, that you see here is allowing you to exactly search the text from the image. Another option is these natural language processes where we do the name entities, meaning, again, machine learning takes all the names of the people, of the entities, or the addresses, and once we start searching through that in data share, we are able to find the documents, again, through clusters that helps us a lot, again, speed up the process. Everybody who ever learned or worked on anything like this knows that this is far from perfect. This is really not working as much as we would like, because most of the people using AI has like a huge expectations. That's why we don't let this happen and slip it and leave it like that. We fact check it. We always need a human factor. This, no matter how good the tools, and no matter how well you train them well, you still need to have it. The next steps of AI for ICIJ is that we approached the group and created a new collaboration with Oslo Met University, and we are about to publish the new project connected with that, not investigative project, but AI project that is based on supervised learning. And we are doing something that it will help, and it will be open for all the journalists around the world. And now it's the deployment phase, the final phase before we publish it. It's for passports detection. No matter how big the documents you have are, we are trying to make it very easier for journalists we are working with so that they would immediately see which documents are passports. Why is that relevant? That's relevant because all of the people that we are investigating at some point are, in most of the cases, are giving the photocopies of their passports in order to open entities, in order to buy luxury yachts, airplanes, and so on. And by detecting passports, we are speeding up the process of understanding who they are, where they're coming from, and this is a direct connection with them. One more thing that we will talk, and that again, four of us are part of it today, is that another alliance that we will have the time to share with you again, but that's another form of collaboration, and for ICIJ, that's immensely, immensely relevant. So thank you for listening in.
Thank you very much, Elena. And let's. And of course, we can talk a lot, and many of these projects have so many other things, and we will navigate those through the questions. So we are doing brief presentations, and then we'll go through a longer Q&A and talk more in depth into these things. But now, also immense honor to introduce Marina Walker-Guevara, who is the executive editor of the Pulitzer Center. She is, before the Pulitzer Center, she was the deputy director at the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and also pioneered in many of the cross-border collaboration models. So I think it's a privilege for us to have her here. And like the Pulitzer Center is doing many things that involve the use of AI and holding AI accountable. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, and hello, everyone. It's my first time in Greece, so I'm really celebrating being here with all of you today. I work at the Pulitzer Center that Emilia mentioned. We are a global organization that supports in-depth journalism worldwide through networks of collaboration, through data, investigative journalism, and as well as funding. So what I want to talk to you today is about our AI initiative at the Pulitzer Center, which started way before the latest hype around AI. When we started thinking really about the immense responsibility of journalists worldwide, not only to use AI, but also to investigate AI and to be, to hold AI powers accountable. We have to remember when we think about AI that it's not just a technology. AI is ideology, AI is power, and AI is money. So it is our responsibility, if I can make this word, to understand, to investigate, and yes, to co-opt AI in really smart ways, like Jelena was mentioning, the ways that ICIJ uses it. And something that jumped out at me when I was listening to you, Jelena, is that none of these things are flashy, none of these things are exotic. It's not the hype that we are seeing, in other places. These are very specific tools that are oriented to a process, to the journalistic process, at the service of this process, and enhancing and accompanying the work of the journalist. And the journalist and the human is always in the middle of the process. So thank you for reminding us of that. There's no fireworks and there's no magic in AI, but it can be a tremendously helpful tool for investigative journalists and all journalists. Just because we throw these terms and it's good to remind ourselves, artificial intelligence is this kind of like suitcase term. There are a lot of technologies that are packed inside of that suitcase term. The one that we are focusing right now, because it's what has been most useful until now to investigative journalists, is machine learning, which is this process in which computers learn from data, and then they are able to find patterns in our stories. Then there's, they learn from data. With deep learning, they learn from huge amounts of data. So let's look a little bit. We talked about recently about classification, right? Like this is what algorithms and machine learning is good about. It's good about going out in the wild and looking at things that are they are the same, but they look different. And it's able to have learned all these different ways that they look different, and then cluster them and pull them all together. So I like to say that machine learning helped us tackle some investigations and work that seems that until recently maybe we said it was impossible. Impossible because the data was too big, impossible because the data was too messy and too inconsistent, but it would take us a lot of time and a lot of money to be able to do that work. So just to illustrate in journalistic terms, so we said that the algorithm goes in the wild, there's chaos, there's data, documents, passports, financial statements, things that we don't even know what they are. It helps us classify us with some instructions that we give them, like a recipe in a cooking class. It finds a pattern, the pattern that we are asking them to look for, and then that pattern leads to a story. And that's the ultimate purpose of the use in journalism, where it's always about the story. So not the technology for the technology on itself, but at the service of journalism. So journalists in our networks have used machine learning for many, many reasons. The one that I want to focus on in the little time I have is how machine learning has helped environmental investigative journalists to make progress in areas that are like really difficult to investigate. For example, tropical rainforests. Tropical rainforests, besides being really endangered and really vital to the future of the planet, there are 3 of them: Southeast Asia, Africa, and Congo Basin, and the Amazon. And I want to tell you a story about a journalist who is not a data journalist, who is not a coder, but who found an excellent use case for machine learning, for artificial intelligence in his investigation of the Amazonia in his country, Venezuela. His name is Joseph Polisuk, and we've all worked with him, we know him. And Joseph came to me in the middle of the pandemic and said, listen, we can't keep telling the story of the destruction of the Amazon. Specifically, he was looking at gold mining, one mine at the time. What we need to reveal, as we all like to call it, is the bigger system, is the criminal infrastructure besides the destruction of the Amazonia. And to do that, we have to look at like the full scope of the gold mining criminal enterprise. And also, he said, we also need to not only find all the mines, but we also need to find all the illegal airstrips. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like airports in the Amazon? It's just like, no airports, just illegal, literally, like roads, dirt roads that are, opened so small planes can land, get the gold, get the other commodities, go out, go to the other places where OCCRP and everybody else follows the money and follows the gold. So what he did, we supported, is first of all, we connected him with an organization that had the knowledge that Joseph didn't have. It's called Earth Genome. Earth Genome, write it down, because this is a great organization that partners with journalists who are interested in using these tools in environmental reporting. And so what they did is they taught this, they trained an algorithm, and you saw, remember the slide about the classification, is this a bagel, is this a donut? In this case it was, this is what a gold mine, the scars on the earth, this is what the gold mine looks like in the Venezuelan Amazon. And we had pictures that Joseph had taken in his trips, pictures from other journalists, but we also had satellite imagery, which is something that has become much more available to journalists as a resource, as a tool, as data that we can use. So we gave the algorithm lots of possibilities of what gold mining looks when it happens. What is the scar that it leaves on the earth? And then we told the algorithm, now go find more. And then the algorithm would come, and then manually, Joseph and the people at Earth Genome would like reclassify, would say, yes, no, you got it wrong, you got it right, you got it wrong, you got it right. And then the algorithm learns, okay, then I'm not going to pick that anymore because they told me it was wrong. So look how beautiful this process is of interaction of machine and human, never the machine alone. They get it wrong, they make mistakes, but when they get it right, it's amazing how they can scale the work that we are doing. So these are the images from satellites that were fed to this algorithm. Here you can see the images of the airstrips that they were looking for as well. So the result was published, was amazing. It was published in El País, as well in Armando Info, which is a local Venezuelan outlet where Joseph co-founded with Emilia and Evald. And they found, all in all, after this was done, 3,000 mines that were not known before, that maybe a few of them had been spotted by journalists or activists, but they were able to show the full scale of the gold mining, as he calls it, criminal infrastructure. The story didn't finish there. After that, they intercept Brazil and the New York Times. And if you know anything about US media dynamics, those two names don't come together very often. They are at odds, sometimes journalistically, with each other. They don't collaborate. They found this so important that they collaborated and worked together and gave each other credit on a story. about the coal minings and the airstrips of the Amazon. What they did is took the methodology just from Venezuela to the entire Amazonia. And they published a story, this is the New York Times one, where they identified 1,200 illegal airstrips that were encroaching and destroying indigenous lands. So that was kind of like the parameter that they gave it. Not everything, but the ones that were like really in the territory of indigenous communities. Yeah, this is the story on the front page of the New York Times. And then what we did is we put all of this data in an application called Amazon Mining Watch. So you can access Amazon Mining Watch, and you can do your own investigations. You can zoom in any of these points, and then look at all the data that is attached to each one of these gold mining sites. The story also didn't finish there. Just 2 weeks ago, we did a partnership with Cambridge University to replicate and to take this methodology from the Amazon now to Southeast Asia. Because if it worked in one tropical rainforest, it should work in the other one. But there are many buts. It's a different rainforest. So we are working with scientists and students to try to see how we can now expand it to other geographies. So lots of lessons learned here about collaboration, about ingenuity, about you don't need to be an engineer, you don't need to be a coder, you just need to understand when the technology can make a difference in your project. I don't have time to talk about the other part, which is reporting on AI, but I just want to very quickly tell you that this part, and it's going to be covered on Saturday in a beautiful workshop, the AI Spotlight Series, which is a training program supported by the Pulitzer Center to teach journalists how to investigate algorithms and how to follow the money. It's unavoidable to all of us. As much as we love to use the technology, we need to be able to get under the hood. We need to be able to investigate the power, the money, the ideology. For all of these reasons, secretive, invisible, unregulated, all of these reasons, and this reporting is not so different from any other good reporting. If you look at the questions that we ask when we report about AI, these are the same or very similar questions that we ask ourselves when we do any other great investigation. It's questions about harm, it's questions about money, and it's questions about unintended consequences. So don't miss on Saturday at 10:30, the AI Spotlight Series. Lam Tuivo and Gabriel Geiger are going to be leading that workshop. It will give you all the tools, all the knowledge, all the frameworks that you need to do this investigation. This is the framework that you will need, that you will learn, which is in each state of AI development, on the data, the compute, the models, and the applications, how to go, what are the issues to investigate, who are the actors, and who are the victims or the impacted people. So if you are curious about this, don't miss on Saturday, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Marina. And actually, that investigation that Joseph did won last year the Global Shining Light Award that we give at GIGN, so it makes us very proud. I have also, this is very interesting because I think I met Paul the first time when he was at one of our global investigative journalism conference, trying to convince journalists to give him links about where to find corporate information and where to find documents and data in their countries. That was the birth of the investigative dashboard. So he did it in a workshop, and what I admire about Paul is his capacity of innovation and actually trying to find and use technology to help and serve the investigative journalism community. And since then, he has been the brain behind many initiatives that the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project has done. Sorry, all our organizations have very long names, and if you go with the acronym, it's, yeah. So, but he has led many initiatives, so he was as head of innovation, but he's also co-founder of OCCRP and co-director, so He's a great believer in collaborations, but I think one of his passions, or like when you see him thriving, is like trying to create new things for the community, and one of those, it connects with the use of AI and in the past also other technologies. So it's also an immense privilege, and well, now he will walk us a bit more about what OCCRP has been doing with AI, also including, same as ICIJ, some tools that also, and I emphasize, because it's important, they are available for free. So all these things that Pulitzer Center, OCCRP, ICIJ are doing are at the service for the community. So the workshops, the tools, anyone can have access to those. So just an important point. So Paul.
Thank you, Amy. Hi all. So I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. For those of you who don't know what OCCRP is, this is one of the largest investigative reporting networks in the world, focused on obviously investigating organized crime and corruption. And we work with partners everywhere, including here in Greece. We have amazing partners here, and the idea is to combine the local power, the local investigative journalist power, with the local power from elsewhere, and to create these global stories that expose and stop corruption and high-level organized crime from happening. So this is amazing work done by Pulitzer, done by ICIJ, done by JJN. I mean, everybody's trying to innovate, and so do we at OCCRP. But let me ask you a question first. How many of you, I mean, you're mostly journalists here, how many of you are concerned, are worried that the AI, the LLMs, are going to take your jobs or are going to affect you in a negative way? Just a raise of hands. How many of you are really worried about that? Very, very few. How many of you see huge opportunity in AI and LLMs for your work? More people. But I see a lot more people, but I still see a lot of undecided people here. So I'm going to plead a bit, for AI, for the usage of artificial intelligence, of large language models, because what I feel we did at OCCRP, and don't get me wrong, I'm very, very happy, I'm very proud of the work we're doing at OCCRP. In the past 15 years, we contributed to the recovery of more than $10 billion from various bad parties, from corrupt corporations, from organized crime. This is not a bad outcome. But if you look at the corruption and organized crime, so just the money that flows every year through the world's financial system, like corrupt or criminal money, we're talking about 3.1 billion per year. That's according to NASDAQ, that's according to the UN. But let's not take 3.1 trillion US dollars. Let's say 1 trillion US dollars. Now, I counted in my head, and between us and ICIJ, we've probably investigated in the past 15 years corruption worth up to 1 trillion US dollars. So think about this, 1 trillion in 15 years. And I think I'm exaggerating a bit. But we're talking about at least 1 trillion a year, if not 3 trillion. So what's happening here? What we're doing here is great, but it's not enough. So this is where I believe technology, this is where I believe machine learning, that we started at OCCRP a long time ago, and we have a system called Aleph. How many of you have used Aleph? Just a raise of hands. Aleph. So quite a few. So Aleph is a system, for those of you who are not users of Aleph, is a bit similar, although we took a different approach to data share. It's really a system to make sense of data sets that contain information about companies, people, and so on, to give you leads for your investigative reporting or to help you during your investigative reporting. So at OCCRP, we always do a zoom in and out between technical systems and then field work, and then this combination of going from the local level to the global level and then to the system and back and so on. That's what creates meaningful investigative reporting. So at Aleph, we applied machine learning for a long time, to process data, to detect language, to extract data, entity extraction, to do all sorts of other processes that Jelena was speaking about. But we are always about experimenting with Aleph, and we're seeing Aleph as the seed for something much, much more important. And what we're seeing is, and what we're experimenting now with, is the creation of an investigative LLM, an investigative large language model that would allow us to make sense of a lot more data than what we are processing right now. So let's say with Aleph, we're processing right now up to, let's say, 200 terabytes of data. Now, I'm not sure what's the amount of data that ICIJ is processing, but it's probably similar, When, again, you look at the need, and this is in correlation with the amount of corruption.
Just to picture, because 200,000 terabytes of data, like if anyone here, like how big is that?
In physical terms, you can't really describe it because it's really, really, really huge. I mean, I think if you speak just about Panama Papers was how big?
11.4, like Paradise 13.2, 11.4, 11.2, 13.4, and 11.9. Those are like the million records, each one of those.
So this would be 20 Panama Papers or more. So the idea is that we do have a lot of data, but this is still tiny compared to what we need to process currently to get to investigating, those 1 to 3 trillion US dollars worth of money laundering and of corruption every year. Now, to get there, the approach we're taking at OCCRP is that with Aleph, we developed a taxonomy called Follow the Money. What is a taxonomy? A taxonomy is a way to understand data, and especially in the context of corruption and crime, you always have to follow the money, right? That's the main thing, follow the money. So what we did was we looked at the processes, we looked at the data that we always work with, and we said, what are the most important entities inside this data? Well, you always have to follow the company, you always have to follow the bank account, you always have to follow the crypto wallet, you always have to follow the proxy, you always have to follow the bank. So, and then the relationships between these type of entities. So we define this follow the money taxonomy in order to understand large data sets that we ingest inside Aleph, these 200 terabytes of data. Now, once you develop a taxonomy that really comes from your work, from everybody's work here, in this room, once you understand that taxonomy, you can apply that taxonomy over large data sets to make sense of what is going on inside data sets. So for instance, the users of Aleph would know that they put inside Aleph, let's say, a company registry of Greece. You put all the companies, in Greece, you put inside Aleph, and then what the system does is it extracts the entities, first of all, from the company registry of Greece, and then it matches those entities against many other data sets that are inside Aleph. But right now, the system will give you a long, long list of, matches. This entity is in this data set and this data set. And the idea is, with using AI, with using machine learning, is to go beyond that. And we did go beyond that in identifying patterns. But imagine a system where someone without any technical knowledge would be able to use this investigative LLM and to ask something like, okay, so we have these warehouses here, where this conference is held. Which, who is the owner of these warehouses here, and are they connected in any way to crime? Or you take a large part of Athens, and you say, okay, who owns the hotels in this part of Athens? Trust me, you'll find a lot of criminality inside that. So this is what we're trying to solve, and I think with systems like Aleph and with data share and others, we managed to make the first steps towards solving the problem, towards working better in the public interest, because this is where the AI offers a huge opportunity. It helps us, as we saw in the case presented by Marina, it gives us the opportunity to go from the manual searches, from the mind of the investigative reporter, to something much, much larger, and then back to the minds of the investigative reporters. So, in my opinion, AI, LLMs will create a lot more opportunity for work for investigative reporters. I think when we first met, and I'll finish with this, Amy, because I speak too much. When we first met, I was telling everybody that I want more science inside investigative reporting. We need to be a little bit more applied in what we're doing, because right now we're just cherry picking. We're picking this story and that story and that story. But are we really working in the public interest in like the full sense of the word? And I think not yet. I think what we're doing is we're building a blueprint to go to the next level where we'll really understand what's needed, and we know how to do things. We only need to be able to embrace technology in a way that makes sense for the public.
Thank you. So, and we have, I will start with something here, because we have been covering some uses and a lot of opportunities, but people don't like to talk about the challenges and the hard things sometimes, and that is equally important. I remember, and Jelena put on the slide, there was a project that ICIJ worked on that was called the implant files, and in that project, there was like over 1,000 freedom of information requests done, so not only leaks, and millions of records gathered on adverse event reports of patients who had been having problems with medical devices. And the computer was used, or machine learning was used to teach, to detect death. So we taught the computer how to find death. Because a reporter, same like Joseph Sasha, had talked to an expert, and the expert said, actually, it seems that sometimes manufacturers are not reporting deaths as deaths. So in the text and the narratives where it was explained what had happened with the patient, we actually basically built our own dictionary, and we had over 3,400 ways in which death was expressed, including patient expired or other things, no? Still, the computer, sometimes it was not the patient who died, but the father of the patient, or the battery expired, so the computer was not getting everything right. So same, we had to check, no? So it took months. So it was not a flashlight, or it was not instant. So you had the reporter working on the story, you had a data journalist, you had a developer, you had an editor, and then we had 11 journalists fact-checking and going one by one through the results that we got. So we were able to screen millions of records to get some thousands, and through that we were able to detect over 2,000 cases where a patient had died and their death had not been reported as such. But that involved resources. Had we just done the machine learning, we would have not gotten it right. Then we would have gotten hundreds of thousands and wrong responses. So there was a complex process in terms of being able to report on something that the machine learning helped us to do. So this is just one thing of the accuracy. So you can't just trust immediately. You need to know how accurate your model is, for example. So that could be a challenge if you blindly go and say, I have machine learning here, I use it and publish, because then you could get it wrong. So what other challenges do you see? And I will let Paul also talk about a collaboration that is tied to one of the challenges. But what other challenges do you see in terms of the uses of AI and those things that are not equally fancy, but we end up doing because it has helped us advance our work, but yeah, it's not perfect, no?
So I would start by saying that just like we talked why we use it and what are the main reasons to use it, I would also say that when talking to reporters and to meet their needs and to meet the needs of the investigations, we always come to the idea to see that expectations are huge. And everybody just needs to understand that you cannot follow these big expectations, but you really need to choose wisely. And most of these is choose wisely the tools you're going to use in order to make sure that you solve one of the problems. Talking about what are the challenges of AI, I would, of course, immediately have to say our resources, not only in human power, but also in many other ways, resources of money, of course, and also just to have the idea of you always have to have the idea of the size of the documents you are dealing with. Just like Paul was mentioning, this is immensely important to understand in order to know what to apply and when to apply it. And the second thing is like the resources when it comes to time and how fast you want to do something. Talking about thousands and thousands of documents, even less of them will take a lot of time because you will have to check them as well. So you need to have resources in other ways, and what I'm sure, again, all of the organizations are doing is we have experts that are working with us. And we managed to invest in like a local team, in like ICIJ team, and we have for the first time like only one person working on this, which is a lot for us because ICIJ has around 40 people. So we try to smart invest our resources in this. So talking about the challenges, number one is, I would say, resources.
Yeah, and yeah, I like to call it AI with a purpose when we need to decide. So forget about the flashlights and let's think about the purpose. When are we using it? But like, I think Marina would like to add.
I would just make the precision because I don't want you to all be scared and say, oh, only if we have like 20 specialized people, we're going to be able to use these processes. It's what you want to do with it. If your end goal is to be able to reach a specific number that you are going to publish in the front page of the newspaper, and it can be, I don't know, 3,432 deaths that were caused by medical devices, or 1,200 illegal airstrips like you saw in the New York Times, that's when the manual fact-checking comes into play, because you can't, you know, you want to be accurate. And so that's when, you know, once you go from like impossible to count 1,000,000 times to 3,000, then you're going to have to check the 3,000 by hand. But then you can also use machine learning or any of these tools for other reasons to get a shortcut at something. And then you're not going to have to fact-check everything. You're going to have to fact-check the path that you choose to follow or the document that the classification gave you that you wanted. So don't be concerned. But also want to invite you to think creatively about who are your partners in these stories. We said you don't need to be a coder, you don't need to be a technologist, but you do need to be a collaborator in the age of AI. This is an interdisciplinary story. As it ever was an interdisciplinary story, this is it. And it includes not only coders, it includes everything from sociologists, architects. I have seen, you know, if we're working with satellite imageries and you're looking at buildings, you better be working with somebody who knows about structures, engineers, architects. So this is a great opportunity to go to your local university to see, to start to find out who is doing this work at the local level and go sit with them. They are desperate for real-world problems. You know the real-world problems. They sometimes don't, but they have knowledge, tools, and techniques that can really help a journalist. So that's a beautiful matchmaking that you can make. And we have our friends here of Amenaza Roboto from Uruguay, and they are masters at matchmaking and working with academics and journalists on complex problems like this, so you should talk to them.
Yeah, and I love that. I have also seen neuroscientists, actually. And, like, that's another one that, like, who have been using a lot of AI in the medical sphere. Like, there's a lot of work to explore things with AI. But I think that's not, don't be discouraged. Like, I think partnerships is the way to go, too, because we as journalists can't know everything. And in that sense of collaborations and challenges, I will let Paul talk about something where, like, all of us, like Pulitzer Center, OCCRP, ICIJ, GIGN, have been part of. And it's an initiative also that tries to find answers to some of the challenges.
Yeah, so, I mean, one thing about the AI is that we have to own the space as investigative reporters. We have to own it. And right now we are relying a lot on, you know, outsourcing certain things. And it's not always good to give your data to external actors, right, to process that data. So for us, it's very, very important to build capacity, to build computing capacity to be able to experiment with LLMs at the level of each of your investigative media organizations. So what we did last year is we created what is called the Cloud Alliance, because we realized the need for augmenting the computing power at the level of the whole investigative industry. So ICIJ and Pulitzer Center, GIJN, DDO Secrets, I mean, lots of organizations, 30+ organizations, are now part of this Cloud Alliance, where what we're doing is we're trying to find better deals for data for everybody. And we're pursuing a few avenues because we want, so now, between ICIJ and us and others, I think we're maybe, computing up to 1 petabyte of data. We probably need about 10 times more than that. So with that, I mean, at OCCRP, for instance, we're paying about 300,000, if not more, US dollars a year for computing data inside Aleph. That's just the data we compute, not the hosting and all that. So this is very costly. And we're not even implementing yet our own AI model. So I think, in order for us to be able to experiment, we need that compute power. And this is where the Cloud Alliance is very instrumental. And we got a grant, and we're conducting right now an audit across the investigative reporting industry to see what the need is and what kind of infrastructure do we need to build in order to be able to experiment ourselves in safe environments that have a lot of compute power. And we have lots of ideas about that. I invite you to become members of the Cloud Alliance. This is open to all investigative reporting organizations, and it's, I believe, a place where we'll be able to experiment and to advance investigative reporting, to take it really to the next level where we work a bit better in the public interest.
Yeah, so, and we still have minutes, some minutes for questions, and I don't want to monopolize the stage here, so please, yes, let's start there, yes? I will gather 2 or 3, and then we can, yes.
I'll shout because I didn't get a mic. The question is for Yelena. You had one slide called AI and fact-checking. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Okay, so AI, and let's gather 3 questions because we don't have much time, and then we go, and yes, here? Can you?
Hi, I have one question. You can use, as you said before, you can use AI to translate to Word documents. What will happen on the documents are in the obscure language? Do you think that we translate accurately or no?
Sorry, with the language of the document, is that a question?
They are very obscure. Like, for example, this found a document in a endangered language.
In a
language. Do you think they could know the not much data for that language? Do I translate that document successfully as much as a large language?
Okay. So the language challenge when we're dealing with documents. So some languages are harder to work with than others. So that can be a problem for AI. The last question, and then we go through the yes, please. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
I come from old school journalism, from typewriter generation, and we had specific kind of challenges during our time. I wonder if the panel has any such challenge that we had. The information providers, whistleblowers, and potential or existing partners by then, they were reluctant, they were rejecting technology, saying, no, we don't want to leave any digital footprints, not even on a floppy disk, everything on paper. And so I wonder if you have a similar situation where you have information providers or whistleblowers or maybe potential prospective partners who have some kind of rage against machine learning or any kind of technology rejecting people. I was just curious. Thank you.
No, that's an interesting question. Also, sometimes you have, sometimes we think about the records already being digital, and sometimes you have countries where a lot of the records are on paper. That doesn't mean you can't make it digital and use these processes. Just as a parenthesis, because I come from a country where a lot of stuff is on paper still, where you have very interesting things. So just you can still do data even if you think that it's not online or it's not a big leak, and you can gather that data. But I will start, let's say, Jelena, with a fact-checking question.
So the name of the tool is Prophecies. You can find it on GitHub as well. It's open. And it was created by a colleague of mine, Miguel. He's amazing, and he's part of data team and the tech team. And what we are doing there is to try to combine both teams in order to find the most crucial questions that we can solve between the teams. And what Prophecies does is to provide a value for which the fact checker, which is a person, goes through and says correct, not correct, or I leave a comment saying this should be it, for example. And it can be used in many other ways. It can be used not only in journalism, it can be used in validation and verification processes of a different kind. And as I said, it's an open software that we put on the GitHub together with other things from ICIJ. When you just go to GitHub/ICIJ/Prophecies, you will find it.
Okay, thank you. Paul, do you want to address the language and the whistleblower question? Maybe combine in 2 minutes, so Marina has 2 more minutes.
I'm not quite sure I understood the question about the translation, but translation is crucial, obviously. Now, at OCCRP, for instance, just to enumerate some of the software pieces that we're using to do this, we use at Aleph, fast text library to detect the language. And then, we use NAIR, Spacey, and, to identify the entities inside it. But the important thing is that you have to work across many languages in order to investigate. I mean, cross-border reporting is about working across documents and across very bad quality documents in various languages that are very difficult. So in some languages, it's easier. I think you were talking about that a little bit, and in some languages it's harder. And in some languages you can get more false positives yet, but this is advancing. I think the way is to translate, and we're using AI for translation because that's obviously the way to go, and it's elastic and all of that. But really the trick is to be able to eliminate the false positives, to be able to curate documents between languages, and to identify what you want to go for.
I just want to add a little bit on the language side to remind us that the majority, the huge majority of language models are trained on languages that are more Western, largely English, and that the vast majority of languages from the Global South, for example, are not present in that knowledge base. So what that lack of diversity, in this case in languages, tell us about the knowledge that we are getting and the inputs and the outputs that we are getting from large language models. So next time you're chatting with ChatGPT or you're using it for anything, just remember that. And this is a big challenge for all of us going forward, and for the investigative LLM, which, I know that those documents are in multiple languages from around the world, so that would be like a great contribution if that happens, that be represented.
Yeah, as we have like 2 minutes left, I would like to each one of you close with us, because a lot of people are thinking here, well, should I use AI, machine learning? So, if you were to convince them, where to start or how to start, or a tip to start with using AI. So, because it can be very intimidating when we start hearing AI or machine learning. So, one sentence of piece of advice that you think you could recommend. So, who wants to start? Jelena.
Yeah, I would say AI is not magical, but I would say you can start small by having a right staff at your team who would be dedicated only for this. And of course, assess your needs and start with something small. And as we mentioned many times here, one of the most important things is to choose your tools wisely and just try to assess what you need, because many of these things are out there. You maybe just don't know that it's out there. So just team up with someone who understands this and try to assess your needs.
Okay, Paul.
Well, in my opinion, everybody should be, and I'm always doing this. I'm always taking a hard look at the work we're doing, at the work I'm doing. How much am I serving the public? Can I do more? Can I use my investigative reporting skills to do better? So I think that's where we have to have a little bit of introspection, and to think then, about technology. And if technology can help us advance the interests of the public, that's, I think, where a decision is made by each of us to embrace technology in a meaningful way, taking into account all the risks, and trying to be as honest as possible about the usage of AI and LLMs. But it's really about the public interest. That's all I care about, and I think that's all every journalist should care about.
I would say we need to, like what I said at the beginning, understand AI, investigate AI, and co-opt AI. And don't be embarrassed if at this point you can't tell the difference between machine learning and deep learning or what are neural networks. It doesn't matter, but there are a lot of, or it does matter actually, and there are a lot of resources out there that can help you distill those knowledges. It is important to understand how the technology works before we even start asking ourselves whether we should be using it in the newsroom. So come to the AI Spotlight Series workshop on Saturday at 10:30, and we'll get you started with that.
Yeah, and if you're looking for inspiration at the Global Investigative Journalism Network, we have our research center. We talk to all amazing colleagues who are doing investigations around the world, including some that involve the use of AI. We break down the methodology. Those resources are available there for free. We publish regularly, and that is a resource that if you want to search for inspiration, how was this investigation done? So we have a full story on, for instance, the investigation that Joseph did in our website, among so many others. So there are resources available, and so that allows you to see where to start to and find that purpose for your investigation and decide, oh, is this an AI project? And then just go with other people. I think there's more generosity in the field. I know if you talk to any of these three amazing panelists here, they will be generous with their time, and also sometimes they will invite you to collaborate with them. So don't be afraid to reach out. And well, unfortunately, we ran out of time, but thanks, Marina, Paul, Jelena. It's always a pleasure, and thank you all for staying with us.